This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi,
featuring retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard, she is someone who went from being completely isolated, imprisoned, really, and horribly abused by her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, in Springfield, Missouri, to then finding herself behind bars for the murder of her mother, along with her boyfriend, Nick Godejohn. And at the same time, becoming quite the hot commodity, quite the popular lady, if you will. Hundreds of people writing into her, expressing their interest in dating Gypsy Rose Blanchard from behind bars. And she even entertained some of those letters and individuals, even ended up marrying one of them. Joining me to discuss this case, Jennifer Coffindaffer, retired FBI Special Agent. Jennifer, how common is it that when someone is behind bars, they start becoming quite the popular person in terms of romantic interest, maybe even more so than they were outside of prison?
It is so common. I actually would love to get a hold of Brian Koberger's long and distinguished list, which I know his attorneys, I think, are shielding. But all of these individuals, Dennis Rader, another one, all of them, really. And many end up marrying. If you look at the Menendez brothers, I believe they've both married since they've been in. Let me know if I'm wrong on that, but I believe they both have. And, it's just everyone is Vandersloot. He was married, even fathered a child, from my understanding, because of their loose, laws, requirements, which weren't many. So it's very usual and typical, Tony.
What kind of individual is it, though, that says on the outside, you know what, I think my best option is to write to these people that are behind bars in prison, that I they can't get out right now. It seems to me there's so many weird elements to it, I would think, in someone's personality, that it becomes advantageous. They're not going anywhere. They're behind bars. They also committed some sort of a crime. We have very high-profile cases where I'm sure they probably get a few more letters than others. But even if it's not a high-profile case, these sort of things happen. Again, back to the profile, what kind of person is doing that, and why writing in?
Well, first of all, that person is very not convinced that the individual they're talking to committed the crime. So they're very empathetic to their situation. We see it all the time in social media. Huge groups form that believe individuals are definitely innocent, even after post-conviction, with extremely strong evidence that's shown. So they, I think, have a lot of sympathy for their situation because they truly believe they're not righteously incarcerated. And then you have the responses from the individuals that they're dealing with inside prison that are saying, well, of course I'm innocent. I've been framed. So even more sympathy builds. And so I think that is the genesis. I've got to tell you, Tony, there was a special agent female that I worked with. She actually became assigned to my squad after this situation, and she was in charge of prison violations, civil rights types violations in federal prison. And she ended up falling in love with a death row inmate.
Wow.
And lost her job with the FBI, was having, conjugal visits with him. It was unbelievable. And I knew this agent for years. She was actually one of the very first agents, in the Bureau. She had been around a long time, way before me. She was lonely, never been married, never had children, because many people become what we call Betty Bureaus. They become married to the FBI because you spend all your time with the FBI and you don't have an outside life. And that was her. And so adding to that profile is somebody who is truly lonely. And these types of relationships you can imagine that person on the inside, you become their only focus. And that sort of attention is something a person like this really needs and wants.
That's true. I didn't think of it from that angle of you are their only focus. They have nothing else to do. So they will give you that attention. And if that's missing in your life, a lot of people can eat that up. Is there also an element to just kind of the infamy of some of these characters? I mean, like a Gypsy Rose, like a Brian Koberger, there's so much attention. It's almost, oh my gosh, a celebrity wrote me back. But really the only reason they're famous is because of their crime.
Absolutely. That is a factor. And we've seen that before in cases where individuals have these relationships and they sort of get this bit of stardom, right? The media goes after them. They start interviewing them. And then all of a sudden they drop the individual that they were courting that was behind bars. So there's definitely that element.
It's one that I don't think many of us will ever truly understand, probably for a good reason. But just so many questions about what would drive someone to want to go down that road, but it clearly happens all of the time. What about the success rate on these relationships? How often do you end up seeing, oh, they've been together 5, 10, 15, 20 years, especially if there is a release involved? I guess it's probably a little bit easier maybe to maintain that behind bars if that's the dynamic one is comfortable with. But once they do get out into the real world, like we're seeing right now with Gypsy Rose Blanchard, is there much of a success rate on those relationships?
Well, I haven't seen any specific statistics on that, Tony, but I think some actually do succeed, at least for a short amount of time. It's certainly much more successful when they're behind bars because everybody becomes comfortable with their situation and they're in a perfect, controlled environment, right? It's like having a caged boyfriend. He can't go out on you. He can't cheat on you. You know exactly where he's at and what he's doing all the time, or a female for that token. So I think it becomes more difficult when they get out. I would love to see such statistics. I don't think they're high though, Tony.
Yeah, I can't imagine they would be. I mean, you're completely changing the dynamic of a relationship. And clearly, if that's what is working for you, there's a level of control, or an extreme level of control, it seems, that the person on the outside likes to have on the other. And that when that person is free to be back in the world, it almost, I would think, completely shatter that dynamic, because they want to go live life now, have some freedom, while that other person was just eating up the idea that, yes, you have a caged spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend on the inside.
Well, and how about this, Tony? The only side you really get to ever see is their most wonderful side. They're able to portray that in letters. They're able to portray that in phone conversations and on visitations. In other words, the amount of time is so brief that you're with them and around them that they only see the shining penny. They don't allow them to see the other side. So I think that's the reason why some of these relationships do last. And last why they're incarcerated, that is. And how about this, Tony? Oftentimes they're having multiple relationships. I mean, really, their mailings and their phone conversations, they're oftentimes having multiple situations behind those bars.
Sick of the ads?
We are too.
Start listening with no commercials now and get access to all of our episodes in advance of everyone else.
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
True Crime Today Premium Plus.
Sign up now.